My experience has actually been that most of the people who come into sustainability are not motivated by utilitarianism. They have a sense either, of they certainly have passion for the natural world, for sort of tackling certain kinds of injustices, and for improving the state of the world. So, in that sense, what I think might be happening may be a bit more subtle. And Ian McGilchrist has this point that, well, he talks about this broad historical narrative, how sort of civilizations grow, and he's making this point that at some point they sort of have this phase of dynamism, and then that phase, as that dynamism slightly sort of weakens, they move into this more managerial phase. They sort of roll out the metrics and the administration. And I've kept thinking about this, particularly as I'm filling all sorts of regulatory reports. I keep feeling like, yeah, we're in this phase with sustainability. There was this initial spurt of growth and enthusiasm, and the sense that, okay, maybe Milton Friedman's definition of, the only social responsibility of companies is to increase profits, even if this is an incomplete version of what he said. Maybe that was too narrow an understanding. Maybe we need to think a bit broader about stakeholder capitalism, about purpose, about all sorts of things. And it was a kind of a principles-based discussion in some sense. And weirdly enough, we've kind of been the victims of our own success in that, because, okay, sort of certain policymakers ran with it, certain institutions ran with it, and then it became like, right, well, we need to operationalize this. We need to report, we need to KPI this. And then it became very quickly bogged down. And sort of like it was engulfed by the broader kind of machinery. And that is a challenge. And to your point, obviously, utilitarianism has this advantage that it can dominate other forms of thinking because it can sort of calculate and incorporate every kind of thing and sort of amalgamate everything into one utility calculation if you define the numbers a certain way. And that kind of implicitly makes utilitarianism the only game in town. If you go for other kinds of ethical conceptions, right? If you say, well, we should think about, I don't know, the right thing to do and the rights of the people involved, very quickly you move into almost landlocked discussion, almost sort of stalemates, right? The rights of certain communities versus other communities. Do even maybe, I don't know, does the natural world have rights? Some people make those arguments in legal cases, right? Very quickly, that's tricky. Whereas, well, at what cost should we chop this down? That's a different kind of utilitarian conversation. And I genuinely do find that because the broader kind of zeitgeist is very attuned to utilitarianism just generally. It pervades, obviously, it's a sort of bedrock of a certain kind of understanding of economics. It's so spread out in so many areas that it's becoming very hard to articulate something which is a non-utilitarian sense of sustainability. And that's precisely the challenge is sort of some of the things we're skirting around is exactly that sense of, putting a value on things which can't be valued. There's a big growing movement, as you know, to do exactly that, the sort of natural capital discussions. And the suggestion there is until we're able to put a price on various things, only then will we fully take them into account. And that might have some merit in some sense, but it's also actually kind of asking the wrong question, you could argue.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's this, I mean, we can bring Ian McGilchrist back into this point, which is whilst there's an element of truth to being able to look at things in a quantified way, is it's only one way in which to approach the truth. And it doesn't give you a sense of something's importance in other ways. And I wonder if there is actually a way back from that. Because that language, like natural capital, C.S. Lewis made this point in The Abolition of Man. Specifically, he was talking about the way that we reduce language as not a reflection of a deep inner sense and sensibility and feeling, but just a word. It's just this. And so conceptions of something that is truly awesome, and not in the American awesome sense, but inspires or things that make you feel like I am truly in the presence of something sublime here, it can be dismissed. And so by framing things as natural capital, if we're just going to view everything as an economic unit, as we've talked about prior to this particular point, you can very quickly end up with a world that is impoverished in so many other ways, even if you've somehow managed to ascribe a value to it in this case.